And we're back on the Pressbox podcast. This will be episode number 51. And in this episode, we're going to talk fantasy football. It's going to be our fantasy football preview show for the 2020 season. We'll talk about specific players, specific positions, and fantasy strategy. What strategy we think works best, and what strategy is not the best, all based on where you draft in the draft order. So a lot of things to talk about with fantasy. It's going to be an exciting show. Everybody plays fantasy out there, or most everybody does. So if you do and you're listening to this, hit us up on Twitter at PressboxPod, as we always remind you on Twitter. We'd love to hear your feedback on the episode. And without further ado, let's talk some fantasy football on the Pressbox podcast.
Okay, we're back on the Pressbox podcast. This is episode number 51, if you're counting at home, on our golden episode. Last episode, we discussed the fits and starts of the football season, particularly the college football season, and some of the issues they've dealt with. Now we're going to talk a little bit of NFL football, but more from a fantasy football perspective, as the NFL is getting ready to start here 2 weeks from by the time you hear this podcast, we'll be within 2 weeks of the start of the NFL football season. September 10th, Thursday night, the Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs take on the Houston Texans in a rematch of the divisional round of the playoffs last season. And my co-host Joseph is joining me, and today we're going to talk about fantasy football. And Joseph, fantasy football has become quite the industry over the last 20 years.
Yeah, it definitely has. This, I guess you could say this is our fantasy preview extravaganza show.
Okay.
If you will. But, it's used to be, the NFL is already one of the bigger gambling sports, but used to be just that. But really, I'd say arguably fantasy football has overtaken even gambling as far as, I guess you could call it a form of gambling, but what's most popular to play along with in the NFL. And you've got entire industries, websites, podcasts, radio shows, I'm sure, devoted just to fantasy football. And there's probably even fans out there that don't really follow football, the game of football per se, but they're in this fantasy league. They draft fantasy players, and that's how they follow along. It's big for the league.
No, it's huge for the league. And I remember back, the first exposure I had to fantasy football was about 25 years ago. And I'll never forget, it was a Sporting News fantasy football. And, of course, they still do this in some leagues, but they attached salaries to the players. So you had a salary cap, and you had to draft players, and you had to stay under that salary cap. But what I remember, the thing that I remember the most about it, that was before the digital age. So you had to fill out your lineup every week and fax it in. And then they would fax you back on Tuesday morning, like wee hours of the morning, the standings of where it was. So it was, you had to write out your lineup, fax it in, they'd fax it back. I mean, today it's become an online phenomenon. I mean, there's still a lot of leagues that draft offline. They get together in groups, and they sit down and they eat and they talk and they laugh. We've done that many times. But this year, especially with all the coronavirus issues that are going on, I would imagine the online drafting has become more prevalent, and it's become so easy to play fantasy football. It's become easy to be in multiple leagues. I mean, you and I both know guys that are in 5 and 6 fantasy football leagues, and there are even some like offshoot leagues where maybe you only have to pick one guy on a Monday night, if you want to, or something like that. So
the whole daily fantasy industry is a thing to itself.
The daily fantasy industry. That's a good way to put it. So
football is the king of fantasy sports. I mean,
no question.
You can play, obviously you can do fantasy basketball, baseball, but football just lends itself to the best setup because they play once a week.
Right.
You draft your team. You have the whole week to think about your lineup and pick up guys off waivers. You play one team head to head on a Sunday, a new team the next team. Unlike baseball, where there's games every night of the week, it's just the best setup, and that's why it's the most popular.
Yeah, and the funny thing about fantasy football, and Nathan, our producer, can chime in anytime he wants to, but is that no matter how, some years I've gone into it really excited about playing.
Right.
Other years, we've taken some years off where we haven't played. Other years I've gone into, well, I guess I'll play this year, but I'm not going to think of it. But then as you get into the season, it's like you're constantly checking your fantasy team.
Yeah.
You're constantly checking guys that are available. You're constantly checking, who did what, who's got the carries, who's scoring touchdowns. So it kind of forces you to get into it. You know what I mean?
and sometimes by week 4 or 5, you're like, oh, why do I play fantasy? And next year I'm not playing, and then you always play next year.
That's right. That's right.
Like you might have alluded to, we had our fantasy draft about almost a week ago. I had my own team, and our producer Nathan splits a team with you. So before we maybe talk about some individual players and positions, let's start with kind of our overall fantasy strategy going into the draft. Like, what position do you value? What position do you think maybe you're overvalued or undervalued, things like that. And I'll let you, both of you start if you want to talk about it.
Well, it's amazing to me how fantasy football has changed over the years. Back about 10 years ago when we were playing, quarterbacks were the guys you took, right? Remember, it was always Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Brett Favre, whoever the quarterbacks were at the time. Right. Now the quarterbacks are so undervalued. It's just like nobody takes a quarterback before like the 6th or 7th round anymore. It's always these dual threat running backs like Christian McCaffrey, Ezekiel Elliott, Saquon Barkley, the guys that not only get carries, but they can catch passes out of the backfield. They score a lot of points. And now, with the PPR leagues, you get even more points for guys like that.
Yeah, that's something. Our early days of fantasy 10, 15 years ago, we never in PPR leagues, so
True.
We never really took that into account. But, I think that what you talked about with the quarterbacks is interesting because I think that's changed as the game has changed. Now, it's more of a passing league now. The rules lend itself to more passing friendly. So theoretically, any week, any quarterback could have a big day, right? Like if I told you that Sam Darnold threw for 4 touchdowns one week, you wouldn't be shocked,
right?
And he's a guy that's probably going to be on the waiver wire. You can pick him up and start him, and you may get 300 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Right.
Whereas, like you said, years ago, it was a harder league to pass in. So your top-notch quarterbacks were more valuable.
Right.
Manning, you knew he could put up 40 touchdowns. Where not a lot of other guys could do that.
Right.
So that's definitely one thing that's changed. I agree with you.
That's true. Yeah, you could always pick up a quarterback on the waiver wire that has the ability at any given time,
right,
to have a game like that.
Right.
Well, look at last year. I'm a Giants fan. Daniel Jones, the rookie, he had a couple games where he threw 3 or 4 touchdowns. And that's out of a rookie.
Right.
So you're right. And then the running backs is an interesting feature though because you have to really be careful. You want to make sure you draft a guy who is the guy on his team. He's not going to share carries with another running back because that kind of defeats the purpose.
Yeah, I agree with that. I guess I still think that if you can get a top-notch running back, that's the most valuable position right now in fantasy. I don't pay too much attention to the PPR. Like whatever my running back catches is kind of a bonus. I don't draft based off of that. But when you compare running backs to receivers, and I'll say those are the 2 most valuable.
Mm-hmm.
You said it. It's got to be a running back that gets most of the touches, and those are few and far between these days. You maybe have 4 or 5 guys that you can really count on to be on the field every down and get the majority of the touches. And other than that, it's sometimes a pretty even split, which is what you don't want because it just knocks down production. But I'm in the running back camp if you can get a top notch one.
Yeah, and also now you've even got tight ends that are functioning almost like wide receivers. You've got if you look at the list here, you got Travis Kelce and George Kittle. They're probably the 2 big name tight ends who catch a lot of passes and score.
Basically receivers.
Basically receivers. That's right. You got Zach Ertz. I remember last year I saw a stat where, what's his name? Carson Wentz had thrown like some ungodly percentage of numbers, ungodly percentage of passes to Zach Ertz because his wide receiver core was like a revolving door. Guys were getting hurt. Guys were,
I don't think he scored many touchdowns though. I had him in fantasy.
He did. Yeah, Nathan was very clear when we were putting together our draft strategy that Zach Ertz was not the kind of guy that we wanted because he didn't score a lot of touchdowns.
I think I had the choice of either him or Kelce, and I was like, yeah, Ertz.
Yeah, Kelsey's definitely. Yeah, Kelce would have been the guy. You look at Evan Ingram with the Giants. He's a guy that can do the same thing. I remember look at Tyler Higbee with the Rams. I picked him up, I think, in week 7 or 8 last year, and the guy went off for me. He had like 3 weeks in a row where he caught like over 100 yards and like 8 or 9 passes and a touchdown. So that's another guy. Interesting, Rob Gronkowski. Let's talk a little bit about Rob Gronkowski first. Here's a guy that everybody knows, Gronkowski. Sat out last year, pseudo-retired. Tom Brady goes to the Buccaneers. Gronkowski comes out of retirement. The Patriots trade him to the Buccaneers. What do you guys think about Gronkowski? Is he going to step in and become the Gronk of old, or are we going to see just an average guy?
Yeah, I guess I think so, because I drafted him in our draft. I was told by some people in our league that I've reached for him too early, but look, my only concern is that I don't really know anything about this because I'm not there, but just in pictures, he looks a little thinner than he used to look, a little lighter. I don't know.
Sure he does.
Juice. Maybe, but okay. The old Gronkowski.
Should he be back on it though if he's playing?
I guess, but the old Gronkowski that was so productive was a big physical guy that was hard to tackle, and that's my only concern is him just readjusting back into playing shape. Okay, yeah, he knows how to run routes, he knows how to play tight end. Brady and his chemistry is going to be right where he left off. I just think that if he's on the field, Brady trusts him, and he's going to throw to him. So he's going to be productive. So that's my take on it. So I think he's going to be maybe not peak Gronkowski like his top 1 or 2 years in New England, but he's going to be in the top 4 or 5 tight ends this year, no doubt.
And they have 2 receivers who are, I think, probably both top 10 on the ESPN fantasy list that can take attention away from him too.
That's true. That's true. And that's the thing about receivers that makes it so difficult for me to think about them as now don't get me wrong. I mean, when you talk about receivers, you got guys like what's his name, Michael Thomas of the Saints. You got Devontae Adams, DeAndre Hopkins, Julio Jones, Tyreek Hill, who Nathan and I got on our team, Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, who Nathan alluded to. But my point is that unless you have 2 of those guys, like the Buccaneers have Evans and Goodwin, defenses can take that one guy away. Now, they haven't done a good job of taking Michael Thomas away. I mean, the guy goes off, seems like every week. But still, it's a crapshoot with a receiver because is he going to be double covered? Are they going to roll the coverage over to him? Yeah. And especially if they've only got one guy. So it's kind of a catch-22. If they only have one guy, they're going to take him away or try to take him away. If they have 2 guys, then you're going to get split receptions usually, That's
why I think nowadays I kind of disagree with you a little bit on the value of a running back if it's not the top maybe 3 or 4 running backs.
Right.
If it's the top 3 to even, let's say, 5 running backs, yeah, they're going to be the highest value, I think. But then I think there's a huge drop-off because then you talk about there's only a couple guys in the league who don't split carries. I mean, everybody else splits carries. So even if they're like the number 7th running back, well, they're probably going to split some carries, Whereas a receiver, I mean, like if you get some running back who's way down on the list, like, he's number 50 or number 60, he's probably going to get some touches in the game. He's going to get some carries. Even if there's 2 other guys that on the team that get carries, he's going to get some. But if you get some receiver that's average, he may only get 1 catch in the game, or maybe even no catches, or he might get 2 targets. Like you need a receiver who's going to get targets and he's going to get catches.
Right.
I feel like there's a larger number of running backs you can fill in your line who are going to get carries. There's not as many receivers who are going to get a lot of targets and a lot of catches.
I'll agree with you there. Just in terms of running backs being valued high just because they're running backs. Like, your point was well taken. The top 3 or 5 guys are the ones that matter. Like, if you look at this list here, the ESPN list, you've got Clyde Edwards-Helaire, okay, the Chiefs running back. Mm-hmm. Nothing against the guy, but he's a rookie. There's no preseason this year. He's never had an NFL carry.
Right.
Okay. They've got him as the 8th ranked running back, 9th ranked player overall.
Right.
Okay. So how does that work? Like just because he's a running back, you think the Chiefs are going to really give him the ball 25 times a game? A guy who's never played in the NFL before.
And to your point, let's say they do give it to him 25 times a game. You don't know what he's like. You said he's never played in the NFL before. So
more than likely, they have another 1 or 2 running backs that they're going to split carries with, in some form or fashion.
I agree with both of you, but you got to remember one thing. Running back is the one position where you can step. If you're a good running back, you can step off the college field and step on the NFL field and still be productive, right? Because what is running back? It's all instinct, right? I mean, it's speed, it's the ability to cut and make guys miss. But all you got to do is get the ball when they give it to you, and then let your natural instincts take over. Yeah. Wide receiver, the routes are different. You know, the defenders are faster. Quarterback's a whole different story. You know, I mean, I would never draft or start a rookie quarterback. I mean, you're asking for trouble there, a guy that's never played. And tight end's probably a little bit like running back, but again, you got the blocking issue and all that. So I guess the thinking there is a rookie running back is the one position that you would be willing to take.
Yeah, if you're comparing rookies across multiple positions,
right?
If you're comparing them to other running backs who aren't rookies,
correct,
why is he in the top 10?
Correct. I agree with that. I agree with that 100%.
Unless I don't know, I didn't research anything. Maybe the Chiefs came out and said like he's going to be our guy. He's getting 30 carries a game.
Well, yeah, I think that once you get down to, even though he's ranked 8th, once you get down to that level, you're better off taking a top receiver.
Well, that's my point. Look at that guy, or pick another top 10 or top 10 running back.
Well,
throw out some names.
You got Miles Sanders, who I don't really love.
Okay.
He's number 8.
Miles Sanders with that Chiefs game we're talking about. That's my point is you'd be better off taking Adrian Peterson, right? He's way down that list.
Which I did.
He's gonna get carries,
Which I
right?
did.
So my point is if you get carries, if you know a guy's gonna get carries, he could break. Well, you know he could, especially pitching. You never know when he's gonna break one. When he's gonna get a carry on the goal line, he's gonna get an easy touchdown.
He said yesterday, by the way, he hopes he can spend 5 more years in Washington.
Yeah, that's my point.
5 more years, it's gonna be 100 by then.
With carries comes the potential for points, at least the potential.
Okay, but
with receiver, you may never even get targeted that much, or you may, like if a defense is taking you away one game, you may get 2 targets. So there's no potential to have any points. That's why I think it's more important to secure a top receiver early on.
Right,
you know?
But the opposite point to that, which I'll make, is, and we haven't talked about the draft order yet, or like what position pick you have, which makes a big difference. But if your strategy is to load up on top receivers and maybe try to get a top tight end or a top quarterback, and kind of circle back to the running backs, I've been in this position before, and it really blows. You're in week whatever fantasy season 2, 3, 4. You just got 2 running backs that aren't that great, and there's absolutely none on the waiver wire that you have actually any hopes for getting any points out of. Whereas, wait a second, if you make an effort to get some running backs that are definitely going to start and at least like you said get carries, I feel like there's always receivers in the waiver wire that you can look at and say, okay, in this game he had 6 catches for 70 yards and a touchdown. Okay, he's going to be on the field. There's a chance he could do something good here. Whereas you're looking at the running backs in the waiver wire, and they may get 2 or 3 carries, and that's it. And you know they're not going to do anything.
I know I've been in that position too, but I think the worst position to be in, which is where I was kind of in last year, is you have a couple of receivers in the lineup who you feel like aren't doing anything. Like they'll get 0 points or 1 point just because they have 1 catch that game,
right?
Or 2 or no catches or 2. And it's like, I mean, I had a guy. I think he has a fairly big name. Was it Brandon Cooks for the Rams or something like that?
Yeah.
He was doing nothing for me. I mean, he was on the field, but he wasn't. But I mean, I might have had a running back who was getting 5 or 8 carries a game. Now he was doing nothing also, but at least there was the potential for him to do something. Or they could have given it to him on the goal line. The receiver had 1 catch or 2 catches with some games. It's like, what do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and another thing another thing that's hard to figure out too is like you take Alvin Kamara. They got him ranked as the 5th highest running back. Well, the guy had a bomb year last year.
I had him last year.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't do anything compared to what he did in 2018.
He had a fair number of yards.
Yeah, but he was hurt a while. Yeah, he never really kind of.
I feel like he wasn't targeted as much either.
And you got to be careful in New Orleans because don't they still have that Taysom Hill guy? Or did he go away?
No, they have. He has a tight end too in fantasy, which is
he could be anything, right? Yeah. I mean, he could be a tight end, he could be a running back, he could be a wide receiver, he could play quarterback.
It matters what he's listed because that's where we put him in your lineup.
Yeah, Kamara did kind of come on a little later in the season, I think, but it was too late for me then.
The injury thing anybody can get hurt at any time. You can't factor that in.
Right. But you just never know what you're getting. I mean, you just. And another thing you got to figure too, like Saquon Barkley. I mean, I love the guy. He's ranked 2nd highest overall running backs, but he didn't do much last year either because the Giants' offensive line blows. Yeah. So I mean, guy may be a great fantasy player, but does he have the team around him to be able to? If you can't run the ball, what are you going to do if they can't block?
Well,
to quote the line from Any Given Sunday, let him block.
But I still agree that those kind of top running backs that you're talking about, the top 3 or 5, are still worth getting
I agree.
On your draft position.
I agree.
First, depending on your draft position, before you get into your
that includes, for me anyway, McCaffrey, Barkley, as much as I don't like him, Elliott, Kamara, and Derrick Henry. If I can get one of those guys, for me, I'm taking them. Yeah, once those guys are taken, then I probably go to a top receiver.
I'd agree with that.
What do you think of you don't like Dalvin Cook, the guy from Minnesota?
Yeah, I'm not. He hasn't proven it to me yet. I mean, he had a good year last year.
Yeah.
And I mean, his first year was 2017. He got hurt.
All right.
He was. I think he was. Did he get hurt?
Yeah,
he got
tore his ACL.
His rookie year, yeah.
But he was doing pretty well before he got hurt. When did he actually play at all?
Yeah, and he had a fine year last year.
He played 5 games.
You know, I just don't.
It seems like every time I play him, he goes off when he's on other teams. But
that's just my opinion. Like he's ranked number 4.
And I've heard some other strategy of people saying when you get into the late rounds, draft some of these late round guys based on more of what kind of if they're on a prolific offense. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because they figure the offense is going to score a lot of points.
Right.
You know, there's the potential for him to. They're going to be in the red zone a lot of the offense. There's the potential for this guy, even though he might be a third running back or a slot receiver who comes in with 5 wide or whatever. There's potential for him to score points, as opposed to drafting somebody who you like the name and you think he's going to be good, but the offense isn't very good, and they're never going to be in the red zone. You know what I mean? That's I never really thought of it that way, but.
Well, you even look at the quarterbacks. I mean, Nathan and I, this was part of our draft strategy. Is who are your top 4 quarterbacks?
Right.
They're all multiple quarterbacks, right?
Yeah.
They're all dual threat quarterbacks. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
I mean, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Deshaun Watson, and Kyler Murray, guys that can throw the ball but can also tuck it and run if they want to, right?
Well, that's the thing. I think the fantasy or ESPN, the fantasy community, whatever, is overvaluing these guys. Like. I ended up taking Brady. Okay, yeah, he's old and all that, but he's not going to get hurt. I mean, he hadn't gotten hurt for 20 years.
Yeah,
like
probably not. Yeah.
Right now, Lamar Jackson's number 1. He's nursing a groin injury right now in practice.
According to the coach, it's soft tissue issues.
All right, Mahomes number 2. Look, you can't really complain with Mahomes.
No,
but I wanted. He was gone when I took Brady, so I couldn't even take him. All right, Deshaun Watson. He's hurt a lot. Takes a lot of hits.
Does take a lot of hits, yeah. Gets sacked a lot.
You got Kyler Murray, second season, don't really know what he can do yet.
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of people who are high on him, but you still know. You got Prescott, who's not extraordinary by any means. He's fine. I'd call him fine. And then you've got
really dual threat.
He's not really
but he's
okay. He can run, but he's not.
But he's just kind of there.
Yeah.
Like he's good enough to be your starter, but that's what else is he going to do? And then you got Russell Wilson, Matt Ryan, and Tom Brady. Okay, and then that's those 3, and maybe not Matt Ryan so much. I think he's non-existent. So I like Wilson or Brady or Mahomes are my top 3 quarterbacks.
Yeah,
and I ended up taking Brady because he was available. But
I agree with that. But I do think the guys that you said that maybe overvalued the dual threat guys. Yeah, there's a high risk that they're going to be injured, but if they're kind of off one game in the passing game, or if the defense is kind of taking away the passing threat, or when things just break down on any given play, they can scramble and break off a 20-yard run, or I just feel like if Brady's if the pass rush is getting to Brady one game, or the secondary is shutting him down, he's not going to get you any points. He's not going to do. Whereas in one of these other quarterbacks, they have a whole other facet to their game that they can kind of shift into gear and still get you solid points. And then when they're really on, they're all over the place. They're running all over the place, throwing, running touchdowns, passing touchdowns. I mean,
yeah, I agree with that.
I don't think they're overvalued, but
yeah, I don't disagree with that.
Well, I mean, Jackson. Who's to say last year wasn't his career year? I mean,
no,
won the MVP.
I'm not saying specific guys, but saying the idea of one of these quarterbacks. Yeah, Jackson, I know. I think it's very likely. I think it's just as likely that he has another year like last year, or that he has a complete kind of bust.
Yeah. It's
very
possible. Very possible. Yeah. Interesting. Let's get this out of the way real quick. When it comes to defenses and kickers, I mean, obviously nobody takes those guys early on, right? I mean, you take them kind of, and you can always drop one and pick one up, right?
Yeah, I think there's kind of 2 schools of thoughts. For me, we'll start with kickers. I ended up taking the guy from the Lions, Prater. I want a kicker that kicks indoors at home.
Right.
Like you said, they're all good NFL kickers, but if you can control the climate, that helps. I mean, the wind's not against you. He's at home. They play in the division with the Vikings, who's indoors.
I was going to say, how about picking this in the division with the Lions?
So that, he's got a big leg and make a long field goal. That's kind of what I look at. I don't really read too much into it.
How much do you look at the teams? For example, like let's take the Vikings for example. I mean, the Vikings last year had trouble scoring points. So your kicker becomes a little more
I think you also have to look at how prolific the offense is. How many points they're going to score.
Yeah. I mean, because if they have trouble in the red zone, they can't put the ball in the end zone, then your kicker becomes a bigger factor.
Or if they hardly ever cross the middle of the field in a game, they're never going to kick any field goals.
That's right. That's true.
For the defense, I wanted to look at the division they play in.
Right.
So I ended up with the Bills. And they're ranked second. And I may have taken a little early based on what people think, but whatever. But they're going to play the Dolphins twice, who are either going to start a rookie quarterback in Tua Tagovailoa or the 45-year-old Ryan Fitzpatrick. All right, not great options there for the Dolphins. They're going to be playing the Jets twice. Sam Darnold hasn't shown me anything. I don't care what people say. He's a turnover machine.
He is.
And they're going to play the Patriots twice, who don't have Brady anymore. Cam Newton's not.
That's true.
He's going to make more mistakes than Brady would. So that's why I like the Bills' defense. And again, I think one of you mentioned this. That's the situation where late in the season you can go week by week. Look at the waiver wire. What do the matchups look like?
Right. You just pick and choose. Yeah. But yeah, your point about the Bills was well taken. Because the Patriots are not going to be the same team.
Yeah.
In fact, I got news for all you Patriots fans out there. It's over, okay? I mean, it's over. Tom Brady's gone. Cam Newton, I'm going to make a prediction. Cam Newton will not last the whole season, okay? For whatever reason. He'll either get hurt or something will happen. But they do still have Belichick. So the Patriots will probably figure out a way to go 10-6 at least.
Everybody makes the playoffs now. So
that's true. Everybody's going to make the playoffs, so it really doesn't matter. But Nathan and I got the Steelers defense, which, again, if you look at divisions there, the Browns, the Bengals. Now they do have the Ravens, so that'll be tough. But they always play the Ravens tough.
But like we said, I think it's a fairly good chance that Lamar Jackson turns the ball over quite a bit, or
very possible. Yeah,
or
very
something
possible.
like that.
But
he's not like a solid of a.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit now about draft strategy. I mean, we've talked some about the players. I think we've hit pretty much on all the positions. We've talked a little bit about all the positions. But let's talk about draft strategy and how that works. Joseph, you want to kind of start that as far as you mentioned you alluded to the fact that a lot of it depends on your draft position.
Right. So position is key, and assuming here this is a snake draft, which I think most drafts are. I don't care what anybody says. The higher your pick, the better it is. All right. So if you have the top 1 or 2 or 3 picks, it's way better. Like this year, I had the last pick. Okay, we're in a 14-team league. There's a school of thought that that's great. You get to get 2 picks in a row. No, it's not great because nobody's left at 14. It's terrible.
So
right?
You'd rather have 11 than 14.
Right. Yeah. I'd rather have 10 than 11, 9 than 10. All right, so that's all of it right there. Because if you got the number 1 pick, you take McCaffrey, you're set. Not totally set, but you're set. You got a really good player.
It's a good chance you win the league if you have McCaffrey. It's a fairly good. I bet LT the year he went all by 1.
You've got a guy that you can bank on.
But remember that Sean Alexander was the guy that everybody wanted.
Right.
My point is one guy won me the league. Though. That's my point.
A guy you can bank for big time fantasy points. Okay, you end up you're in the bottom half of that thing, 12 to 14, whatever. Yeah, you get to take 2 picks in a row, but there's nobody left. All right, so. I'll start by saying that. Now, as far as strategy goes, I touched on it a little bit earlier. If you can get a top 5 running back, you take the running back. All right. If you can't, you move to the top receivers. So whatever pick you have, I think there's a chance that you'll either get a top 5 running back or a top 5 receiver, most likely. And then, I'm not for taking a quarterback in the first round. So you either take top running back or a top receiver. So I guess I broke my own rule because I had the last pick. I took Nick Chubb.
Right. You did.
I think
I was a little confused by that when I saw.
Well, okay, I could have taken any receiver except for Michael Thomas, but again, he was already taken.
But we took
Tyreek Hill. No, we took Kelsey for the first.
Oh, we took Kelsey.
Yeah. So, Chubb, I think is going to get the majority of the carries. He had almost 1,500 yards last year. I wanted a running back in there that I.
That's
feel
a
good
good pick, by the way. Chubb's a good running back.
He's a good running back.
Yeah,
I was just a little surprised at the pick. But yeah.
So I think I understand your concept.
Running back or receiver, top half of the draft, 5 or 6 picks, a running back, bottom half receiver.
Okay.
I think.
And that's kind of what we did, right, Nathan? I mean, we had the 11th pick out of 14, and we said that if the top 4 running backs were not available, which obviously they weren't,
we
were going to go receiver or tight end, and we went with Kelsey, right?
Yeah. Oh, because in my mind, Kelsey and Kittle. Is it Kittle? It's
Kittle, yeah.
I want to say Kittle's was thinking Skittles.
Skittles.
For some reason, Kelsey. I mean, in my mind, Kelsey and Kittle are just like receivers.
Right,
I mean,
they are.
They might as well be in the receiver.
They are. No, you're right. They are.
And they probably get more catches actually.
And that's what we did with our first pick, and then when we came back around, we went for the wide receiver. I think.
Yeah, I think we did. Right? I think we got Kelsey and then Tyreek Hill.
And then Tyreek Hill, and then we went for the dual threat quarterback.
Hopkins.
Yeah. Right. So that was our thinking there, which I thought was good thinking. But I agree with you there. I think the worst place to be, though, this is my opinion, in a 14-team league in a snake draft would be right in the middle. I mean, because you're not going to get one of the top running backs. I mean, you're still going to get a receiver probably if you want him, but coming back around, you're still not going to get anything real good. I mean, I guess what I'm saying is, if I have to be in a snake draft, I'd rather be in the top 3 or the last 3, because I think in those 3. In the top 3, you're going to get a really good player.
Yeah.
In the bottom 3, you're going to get 2 pretty good players.
Well, I don't know if I totally agree with that. But if you want to go that route, I would expand it a little more, like maybe top 5 or last. Because if you're number 4, you're still going to get one of the top 5 running backs.
You are. Yeah.
You get Derrick Henry or something.
You are. Yeah. I'm not all that sold on Derrick Henry. I mean, why is everybody? I mean, I know the guy gets tons of carries, but
he's like
he can't catch.
He's like the modern Eddie George, except there's
no better than Eddie George.
Except he's not afraid of Ray Lewis.
I was going to say I don't want to call him that. I don't want to call him out. But
let's call him out.
Except there's not a linebacker that I think he's afraid of in the league right now.
No, he's a guy that seems to like get on hot streaks almost. Like if you catch him in a 4 or 5 week window where he
can go for 200 yards every week. Yeah,
he's so big. He's just kind of like he's probably. It doesn't seem like he's going to get injured very easily.
Yeah.
It seems like he can take a lot of pounding. You can give him the ball a lot.
Right.
And he's not going to get run down as easily as a smaller guy.
Defensive backs don't like to hit people.
Yeah.
Unless you're a strong safety or some
true.
safety. So
that's true.
They don't want to tackle him.
Yeah.
Right?
They'd much rather see Chubb. They'd much rather have to tackle Chubb and
Kamar or whatever.
Any of these guys, yeah. He doesn't. I guess he's not. I don't think they throw too much. But my big thing with him is, I don't think he's going to get run down because he's big and muscular. He's less likely to get like little nagging injuries, I think, because he can take more of a pounding. Most guys don't want to tackle him. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. And I think once you get past those top 4 or 5 picks, and you get your first 2 picks, I think need to be good quality receivers, or dual threat quarterback like we talked about. But then after that, like Nathan and I did, I think you need to load up on running backs because, like we talked about, you don't want to get stuck with just 2 or 3 running backs, right? And have those guys, be unproductive. So the more you have to start with, I guess you can kind of see how they do, and then if guys aren't producing, you can always drop them and pick up somebody else.
So your point, Joseph. You just went Chubb. That was outside of your strategy, just because you had a feeling, right? Like you just felt like he was going to be better. Because you said top 5 running back, if not, go receiver, but you went Chubb. It was not a top 5 running back.
No, he's not a top 5 running back, but
you just had a feeling.
Not a feeling. It's just he was good enough in my mind to take him because he's not going to split carries with really anybody, and
he was like a top tier running back in your mind. That's why you went.
No, he's a 2nd tier running back. Okay.
Okay.
But I knew I had back-to-back picks, so I could take my receiver, one of my top receivers. So, yeah, I knew that I'd benefit more from taking him than taking another receiver and winging it at running back. That's all.
That's a good point. It didn't matter. You could have taken your receiver there and him next. You had back-to-back picks, and that would have satisfied your strategy. So I guess that doesn't matter.
Looking at this list here, I'll throw out this question, and I've got mine. I'll start while you guys think about it. But give out a name that's ranked outside the top 25 at their position that you think is going to have a pretty big year.
A big year, or just like a
good year.
That's a really good question. Outside of the top 25
in their position. Yeah.
Okay.
Mine's Adrian Peterson, obviously. Okay, he's
obviously
51st ranked running back. Look, the guy that they liked in Washington, they released. Okay, the Darius Guice. Okay, so he's gone. At least Peterson is the starter. All right, there's articles out there that say he's going to be the starter. Now he may not get 30 carries a game, although he should. He's a guy that gets better when you feed him the ball. He's gonna get the majority of the carries. He's 35, 34, 35. He still runs hard. Okay, he's a physical back. He's a guy that guys don't like to tackle either, and he's a veteran guy. He knows what he's doing. This is his 14th year or whatever, something like that.
Like his 50th year.
His rookie year was 07. So yeah, I'm all in on Adrian Peterson. He's gonna have 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns. I'm calling it at least.
All right, that's your running back. Okay.
I can see him having 1,000 yards. Yeah.
All right. So I have to pick a running back now, or no? You can pick a running back now.
I throw it out there as any position, but we can go position by position if you want.
Right.
But
Well, I'll throw out. I'm going to go out. I'm going to say Mitch Trubisky. Okay, at quarterback, and I know he's going to be in a battle with Nick Foles, but everybody gives that guy such a hard time, and he brings a lot of it on himself. But I really believe the guy can be a good quarterback. I mean, he's shown flashes of brilliance. All right. I think the fact that he's now got the same coach for 3 years, I think he's going to exceed expectations. Let me put it that way. I think Mitch Trubisky is a guy I would go with there. At tight end, I'm going to go with Kyle Rudolph from Minnesota. The Vikings. They got what's his name? What's the quarterback's name of the Vikings?
Kirk Cousins.
Cousins, right? Kirk Cousins. I mean, good quarterback, solid quarterback, but not a guy that's going to throw for 5,000 yards. And Kyle Rudolph is a big target. I think he's going to have a really, really good season. So I'll stop with those two right now. Nathan, I'll let you kind of pick up on who you think who you would go with.
Can I say that?
Sure, you can.
well, you're looking there, quarterback wise. What did I say? Outside top 25, right? Not 20.
Right.
I'll go with Phillip Rivers at 26. And I don't think he was gone from San Diego because he wasn't good enough to be a starting quarterback. For whatever reason, he moved on and they went elsewhere. I think he's still a good quarterback. I mean, they're going to throw the ball a lot, all right, because he's a guy that you do that with, and I think he's going to put up some big numbers. What more can I say?
Yeah,
some games.
I'm not all that upset with that pick. I just think that Phillip Rivers, he puts the ball in harm's way.
He does. Yeah.
I mean, I feel bad for him because I think what was it, 2007? They had their best chance when they lost to the Patriots in the AFC Championship game because what's his name? Tomlinson decided to sit on the bench for the second half, and Rivers played the rest of the game with a torn ACL. Yeah. That was probably their best year, the best opportunity to get to a Super Bowl, and they haven't been able to do that since then. But yeah, Phillip Rivers is a nice quarterback. He's had a great career. I mean, when you look at the guys that his draft class, right? I mean, you had Roethlisberger, Eli Manning, and Phillip Rivers. I mean, probably three of the best quarterbacks that have played in the last 15, 16 years.
I'll go, but my overall any position would be Larry Fitzgerald, who's 64th ranked receiver. I know his quarterback. I mean, people may not be too high on Murray. You don't know what you're going to get from him, and I'm sure they have a lot younger receivers now in Arizona. But he's a Hall of Fame receiver. If you have a chance to take him, I think take him. Mm-hmm. And he definitely shouldn't be as far down as 64. I don't think.
Well, he's been the guy there for so long. Now they got DeAndre Hopkins.
Right.
You should take some pressure off.
Take some pressure off.
Right.
And my question I guess my only question mark would be the quarterback, but ESPN has Kyler Murray listed 4th overall QB, so why is Fitzgerald 64th receiver then? Unless that's not, maybe they have more question marks than I do. I'm sure they do. Or maybe they think Hopkins is going to take away targets. But
yeah, that's a good point because we don't know what goes into these rankings. But
yeah, I don't know.
Here's some receivers ranked ahead of Larry Fitzgerald this year: Jalen Reagor, Philadelphia; Robbie Anderson, Carolina;
Henry Ruggs the third.
He's a rookie. Yeah,
I mean, he's right ahead.
Yeah.
Deontay Johnson and Paris Campbell. I mean, these guys. Larry Fitzgerald's a good player. I mean, he's proven it.
Yeah. Well,
he's gonna have a pretty solid season.
They probably take age into factor.
Well, yeah, sure they do.
Look at any of these guys who've been recent Hall of Fame inductees and think if you could have drafted them even at their last couple seasons, you probably would have got pretty good production out of them, right? Favre. If you had Favre in his last couple years, he's going to do all right for you. I can't think of any more off the top of my head, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I agree.
And then running backs, the 40th ranked running back is Tevin Coleman, San Francisco. I don't know. I know they have a handful of running backs, but I just feel like I saw his name a lot last season. Like it was always, I feel like he would just pop up a lot. So I feel like he's probably going to do pretty well. Yeah. Another running back is Frank Gore, who is 84th. I know they have Le'Veon Bell, but something about Frank Gore, he seems to.
Yeah.
I don't think no one's probably going to draft him in your league if you're listening.
Didn't we?
Yeah, we did. Yeah. So I'm saying is you can just take him with your last pick. Yeah. Why not? You never know.
Him and Adrian Peterson are drinking from the same tub of juice. I'm telling you right now.
Tight ends, I don't really have any for you. I don't really know much. I would just say draft him with a good quarterback.
Tight end, the guy that was a little low for me is Greg Olson, number 29. Seattle.
Yeah.
You know, I don't. Unless I'm missing something here. I don't see another Seattle tight end ranked ahead of him. So, you know, Russell Wilson's going to throw it to him. I mean, you know.
Yeah. Too bad Dan Arnold doesn't play with Sam Darnold. But yeah, I agree with that. I'd say maybe also Jimmy Graham, Chicago.
Yeah, Jimmy Graham. Yeah.
I don't know.
He's kind of at the end of the road.
You said Kyle Rudolph, didn't you?
Yeah, Kyle Rudolph, I think will be a good one.
Quarterback, I don't know. Like outside the top 25. Well, there's tight ends within the top 25, I guess, that we talked about, but I don't know.
Well,
Fitzpatrick, maybe? I don't know. I feel like if he plays, he'll probably.
Yeah, he's a guy that's he'll probably can play forever. You know, I mean, the guy's just he's amazing. He really is.
Yeah.
And then another thing which we haven't talked about yet that you have to factor in is the bye weeks, which is not a big deal, but you still have to be careful when you're drafting. You don't want to get stuck with both your quarterbacks on your roster having the same bye week, right? You know, or stuff like that. But it's kind of easy to navigate, but it can become a little cumbersome, especially when you get down into the later rounds.
I heard somebody say once that they might have just been kidding, but just load up on the same bye week and just take your loss that week, and then forget about it. You don't have to worry about it ever again.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? I mean, all the running backs have the same bye week.
Another thing too is that, you know, all you have to do is beat the team you're playing that week. Okay, so
that's true.
You know, you could have a great team and score 110 points, but the guy you're playing scores 115.
That's true.
But you have the second highest points in the league that week, but you lost.
That's true.
And the opposite's true. If you score 65 points and the guy you're playing scores 48, you won.
I've had that before. So, I never score a lot, but I just always win.
Yeah, you just have to catch guys in the right weeks. You know, and you have no control over that, but that's how it works out.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, that's true. All right. Well, let's. It's been kind of a good discussion, and let's wrap it up. I want to wrap it up with I don't know why I want to do this, but I just do. A couple of my pet peeves of fantasy football. Okay, and one of them probably you don't have much anymore because like we said, a lot of the drafts now are all online. But one thing I used to love is when we used to have an offline draft. Okay, and invariably, it wouldn't be long before somebody tried to pick somebody that somebody had already picked.
Yeah. Well, that's not even a problem anymore, like you said. But
I know it's not. Yeah. But how do you do that? I mean, and invariably, this person who would do that had like multiple sheets and tablets with them. You know, so they should be keeping track of who's been picked and who's not picked. You know, so that was one of them. And the second one is people who get in a fantasy league, and this would apply even now. Get in a fantasy league. And they don't, like, take injured guys out of their lineup, or they don't fill a guy that's on bye week. I mean, why are you even in fantasy football? I mean, we've all played teams that have done that, right? That left a slot open or two slots open. I don't get that, you know?
I don't either. And you could argue that if it's week 8 or 10 and you're playing a guy who does that, it's going to help you.
It is.
I'd rather have a guy who wants to be active and give me his best shot. It's just a downer on the league.
It works the other way, too. You could be needing another team to lose, and that other team is playing a guy who's instead of
right. That's exactly right.
So that's ridiculous, too. I agree.
Yeah. No, that's true. It doesn't take long, right? Every week, just check your lineup about Tuesday or Wednesday, see who's hurt or who's out. You know, check it one more time on Friday or Saturday, and then
all you gotta do is make sure everybody's going to play.
Right.
It doesn't matter. You don't have to put as much time into it as like, well, who's going to get more carries, who's the best. Just put somebody who's going to play. That's all we're asking.
Yeah. And let me throw out one other thing that just popped in my head. Do you guys put any value into the fact, like, for example, let's say, well, this is kind of a stupid thing to say, but I'm going to say it anyway. But because you really don't know, but like, you know, on Sunday they have an hour before game time, right? Before they can decide if somebody's out or not. So it's always good to have somebody in your bench that plays for a team that has a lot of late games, right? So that you can substitute in or something,
I never really thought of that.
You know, I mean...
it's always nice. I don't really plan it.
Yeah, it's not really a plannable thing, because you don't really know.
I mean, I guess...
Or a Monday night guy or something.
Have somebody who could play on Monday or Sunday night. That way, even if you go into the late game and it looks like a guy's last second scratch, you can substitute your Monday or Sunday night.
Right. Because otherwise all you guys are done.
I've already played.
Yeah. Right. Interesting.
You have to look at the schedule and figure out who's got the most money.
I think it's too much.
I'll give you the late games. I mean, if you pick a West Coast team and they're at home, they're going to be a late game.
That's true. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Interesting. Well, it should be a good season. I'm looking forward to it, and I think we've covered most of the bases on fantasy football. But make sure you hit us up on Twitter at PressboxPod. That's our Twitter account. Give us your thoughts on who you think the best players are at each position, and also give us your thoughts on who you think, like we had our discussion, who you think the best guy is outside of the top 25 at each position. We'd love to hear from you, get some thoughts on what you think about fantasy football as it's ready to start here real soon.
Yeah, like you said, there's a lot of different opinions out there about strategies, players. So, yeah, we want to hear them on the Pressbox podcast, and we may address a few in the next episode if we see some good ones as well. So, yeah, absolutely.
All right, sounds good. We'll see you next time.